Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the next video in my Eye It or Buy It series, which is a series where I just talk about new makeup releases with a very heavy bent or total exclusivity towards eyeshadow palettes. Today I'll be talking about some lip gloss and stuff too, but it's pretty much eyeshadow palettes. Anything that's new on the scene, or at least recent, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So if you would like to see it, then just stick around. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name's Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow. I filmed this look and I'll link it down below for you once it's live, and I upload about 3 videos a week, all eyeshadow related content, so perhaps you'd like to consider liking and subscribing so that you don't miss any new videos. Alright, I'm going to scooch to the side here so that I can put up some pictures for you guys to see while I chat about these new releases. I like to look at eyeshadow palettes. I think it's so much fun. I am actually on a budget, and I guess it'd be considered a low buy or no buy currently. My husband and I are getting finances in order and paying down bills and paying down debt and making plans to possibly buy a house at some point. And so I can really just sit here and drool over the new releases, but it's very unlikely that I'll actually be getting any of them, at least at this time. Let's start with Martinez Cosmetics. They have recently released a palette called Martinez Diner. It's very retro inspired. All of the shade names are women's names, you know, the sorts of names you might find as a waitress in a 1950s era retro diner. So I think the palette itself is actually kind of cute. It has a nice variety of shimmers and mattes. I do see a lovely assortment of colors. It's kind of a mix of aqua, yellows, and pinks. There are some deepening shades which I really like. Down on the bottom corner there's a very deep plum and then a black. Both of them look to be mattes. Then we've got some beautiful, more sea foamy sorts of blue and green tones, a couple of pinks. I see 2 pinks that look the same. I'm guessing that one is a matte and one is a shimmer. I don't know for sure. It's just based off what I see on the internet pictures. And then I see 2 white tones. Again, I'm guessing matte and shimmer. That's what it looks like. It looks like the shade Peggy is shimmer and the shade Sandy is matte. Kind of reminds me of Grease. We've got some names like Sandy and Frenchie, which are definitely Grease references. Honestly, I think that this palette is cute, but it doesn't really excite me. A few of the shades are really pretty. I very much like that lovely rosy red shade almost in the center of the palette. It seems to be next to a peachy shimmer. I think that shade's really pretty. It would look lovely with all of the pinks and also the dark plum shade. And I really like the blue-green aqua colors in the corner. There seems to be a silver shimmer as well. Overall, I think that it's a pretty palette. It's not very exciting to me. This is not going to be something on my personal wish list, but I think it's probably a good fit for people who are interested in trying out color but don't want to go too crazy. This is like, okay, let's dabble in some aqua tones. Let's grab a pink. There's an orangey shade here that's a bit fun but not too wild. You know, it's sort of a safe introduction to more neutral based colors. So it's probably a good fit for somebody who is at that point in their journey. And I don't know anything about Martinez Cosmetics, but I have heard good reviews about them, so I think it's cute. Michaela and Glamlight have released a second collaboration. This is called the Michaela Pot 2. And it's actually, I was surprised because I saw the first palette and then I saw that they had a travel size, like mini palette as well. There's also a palette of highlighters and some other products like lip sets and brushes. Let's just talk about the palettes though. In the teaser photos, you saw Michaela wearing an emerald green dress, Michaela having really emerald green and gold fingernails, and there was one teaser photo I think of her with very green eyeshadow as well. And then the palette was revealed, and honestly I was a bit underwhelmed by the palette. I was expecting it to be really emerald and gold heavy. I know the packaging is emerald and gold. The packaging is very pretty, but the palette itself, I mean, I think it's really pretty. The larger palette itself, the first one that was revealed before I knew that there was a travel size one, there's a whole row of greens, a whole row of purples, a whole row of blues, and then we've got a row above of like orange green sorts of colors, and then a row above that. The top row is, there's a green, there's a couple of pinks, orangey, blue, white. It's sort of a conglomeration of the rest of the rows. I was just expecting it to be a lot more, I don't know, a lot more green gold heavy, and there are greens and there are golds. It's just not, for some reason it's not quite what I was expecting. I think the palette's really beautiful. I've seen some people using it and the looks they get are gorgeous. Honestly, if I could choose, I currently have the first Michaela palette. If I could choose between the Michaela and the Michaela Pot 2, I would probably go for Pot 2 because within my Michaela palette there are 2 rows of basically neutrals which don't get any use. I never use those shades. So this is more up my alley as far as lots of green, lots of purple, and lots of blue options, and then some other colors that complement them very nicely. I think it's lovely. Angelica did a look using the green row basically, and what she came up with was amazing because she threw on a green and I expected it to be all greens, but then one of the other greens that she used, which was like 2 shades down, had actually these amazing blue undertones. It was so oceanic and mermaid vibey. It was really lovely. I was really surprised by that look using what I thought were green shadows, but some of them had interesting undertones and it was quite unique. I think that, again, if I were to choose between Michaela and Michaela Pot 2, I would probably go for Pot 2, but I already own Michaela. And because I'm not planning on buying anything at this time, I'm just kind of holding on this. It might be in the back of my mind somewhere. I was also intrigued by the travel size palette. The travel palette is 10 different shades. It's a lot smaller. It also has different packaging. It's still emerald green and gold, but it has a velvet cover, which I personally hate the feel of velvet. I know some people love it. It's luxury itself. No, not for me. For me, I go, oh, velvet makes me cringe. But that's beside the point. It really doesn't matter. The travel palette is green and gold on a much, much smaller scale. You've got a couple greens, a shimmer. You do have a gold shimmer. The entire top row looks to be shimmers, and then the whole bottom row is mattes. And it's a little bit, honestly, the bottom row is a little bit more autumnal because you've got a Kelly green, 2 oranges, a deep, I'm not sure if it's burgundy or brown to deepen out, and then you have sort of a sagey kind of matte, and then shimmers that correspond above. Not exact correspondence because there's a silver shimmer above that dark matte, and then there's the gold shimmer. But I think it's a good travel palette. If you like the green and gold idea, you can get it in a smaller size. I do think that the small palette is definitely missing the blue and purples that are in the larger palette. Maybe they could have added one more row of shades to make it a little bit bigger, but also bring in several more color options. Because think blue and purple mattes would still work with the shimmers that are in place here in the top row. Blue and purples would work with gold, silver, even that tealy shade, the white shimmer. I think that they could have rounded it out a little bit more to better represent the full-size palette, but maybe they specifically wanted to keep it small, and so they just went with the green gold idea and balanced it off a bit with some more grounded neutrals. I don't know. I think it's cute. At this point, I'm not going to get either one of them, but I do think that they're a pretty release. We'll just jump into the obligatory ColourPop segment here. Their newest release is called, the palette itself is called Bon Voyage. It is a BT21 ColourPop collaboration, and it's inspired by BT21 characters. Now, I had to look up what BT21 was. I had no idea. I still kind of don't know what they are. I don't really understand. They seem to be little cartoon people or emojis or something like that. I think I'm quite removed from whatever part of culture is doing BT21. I don't know. But anyway, this is a BT21 inspired eyeshadow palette. The palette itself seems to be called Bon Voyage, and I think it's quite cute. It's kind of cartoony coloring. It reminds me of something that Wet n Wild might come out with. Actually, it reminds me a little bit of the Wet n Wild collaboration with Care Bears. Just sort of slightly more childish kinds of packaging for sure, and colors as well. There's a whole row of very, very light tones up top. I see several white tone shades. It's super light pink, a couple of very, very light blues. Then we've got some orangey yellow tones, a couple of blues, a couple of pinks, one green, and then the bottom row is the deepest out of all of them, which has looks like a vermilion shade, a rosy red, a brown blue, kind of a silvery brown or grayish brown, and then what might be a black or a very deep green. I think the palette is cute, but it's a little bit too big for my personal preference. I think the entire top row would just not get used unless they're great, and they would be really good maybe inner corner highlights or transition shades. And then the rest of the colors, they might very well represent the characters within the BT21 universe, whatever that is, but I just don't think it's terribly exciting. It doesn't seem curated. It seems like they, kind of like when they did the little Peeps Super Shocks, that was a good idea because there wasn't a whole palette inspired by Peeps. It was just a collection of little individual Super Shocks, small, very small collections per Peep or whatever it was. But it wasn't just colors all thrown at a palette, and that's what this feels like. This doesn't feel curated. It doesn't feel thought through. It just feels like these are all the colors that the BT21 characters are, so let's put them in a palette, a few accent colors, a few shimmers, and there you go. So this does not interest me at all. I think it's okay, but it's just not very exciting to me. Slightly older news on the ColourPop scene is the Opal of My Eye collection. This includes, I believe, 2 9-pan eyeshadow palettes and then 2 4-pan face palettes. lots and lots of shimmer. I think all of the 8 face pans are shimmery, and it looks like most of the eyeshadow palettes are shimmery as well. Actually, I think that these eyeshadow palettes look quite pretty. The one that's aqua and pink really reminds me of the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda. And then the other one is more orangey red tones. And that's the one that draws me in a bit more because that one I think is a little more unique. I really like the pinky red at the top. It's got a beautiful deepening shade, which goes deeper than the deepening shade in the other pink and aqua palette. I think that the way they've drawn in some more brown orange tones is interesting. And then they have a pink in this palette as well. And then the center shade is that sort of marble galaxy effect that we saw for the first time in the Star Wars palette, which people have been saying is a lot of fun. So I think that these palettes are really cute. They're not for me at this time, but they are really pretty. I like them. And then the last ColourPop thing we'll talk about is the collaboration between ColourPop and Jasmine Chiswell. Apparently, Jasmine Chiswell is full-on 1950s glamour Marilyn Monroe. That is her aesthetic. If you check out her Instagram, you'll just see her looking like Marilyn Monroe all the time. So this collaboration is between her and ColourPop. It includes several lip products and 2 eyeshadow palettes. The palettes are called Such a Starlet and Hello Hollywood. And I honestly, these don't really excite me. They are on theme. They're certainly the sort of color story that you would see in the 1950s makeup world. They're certainly the sorts of colors that you would see on the starlets, such as Marilyn Monroe. Nothing crazy, bold, super colorful, more sedated and subdued, a little more chic, but certainly with the accent of pinks and reds, particularly in the lips. I think this is very much on theme. It doesn't interest me personally, but considering who they've collabed with, it's probably a perfect fit for what she does and what her audience is interested in. So, I mean, I like ColourPop's quality. This is probably a good collection for performance. It's just not the color story that excites me. Jolie Beauty has just released a new palette called Ethereality. This is pretty much a blue palette, lots of blue and some blue-green tones, some bluey purple tones, a couple of pinks. There are some more lemon lime greens and then a bunch of shimmers. I can't tell from the picture if there are any glitters in here. A couple of them do look like glitters, but because it's an indie brand, they might just be amazing shimmers. I don't know for sure. I think the palette's quite lovely. It definitely goes light, medium, dark in mattes. The shimmers look a little bit like there are 2 shimmers in the second row, kind of in the middle, which to me look the same. But if they're shimmers and not glitters, and if they are multi-chromes, which is pretty common in indie brand palettes, then they probably look very different in reality because multi-chromes will look totally different depending on the lighting and the angle. So I can't really say anything about those. And then I see sort of a periwinkle sparkly shade, a blue sparkly shade. I'm not sure, again, which ones are shimmers and glitters. I'm just going to move on. There are several darker tones in the bottom right-hand side of the palette underneath the yellow. There's a whole row of more dark, muted sorts of shades. This palette is very subdued. It's like they turned down the contrast a little bit on most of the colors. Do you remember the Lust for Dusk palette from ColourPop? That was the same sort of thing. Like they chose colors and then they made them all a bit more grayscale, just a little bit. And I feel like most of these shades have that same feeling to them. We've either got true pastels or a couple of pigmented but brighter tones, you know, a bright springy green, that more chartreuse color, a couple of bright blues and pinks, and then the rest feel like they are the original color with a bit more gray added in. So it's interesting. It doesn't excite me because I think that several or probably 50% of these shades would look kind of ashy on my skin tone. I like more vibrance and pigmentation in my colors, honestly, but I think that the color scheme itself is really pretty. It could probably have been pared down a bit. Some of these shades are not duplicates, but verging on a little more redundant. Either they could have added in some more interesting colors that complement what they've got already, or pared it down to be a slightly smaller palette. Overall, I think it's pretty, but it's just not for me. All right, Juvia's Place has just released a new palette called Juvia's Garden, and this one I think is very pretty. This palette has a lot of shimmers. I think it's probably 2/3 shimmers, but the colors are so lovely. It really does remind me of a springtime garden with things like irises, marigolds, lilies. It's very colorful, but not wild rainbow sorts of colors. They're sort of more earth-toned colors. Does that make sense? I'm not going to say it's the grayscale or desaturated like the Jolie palette I think was, but this one is it's just a little softer. Not really pastels, just a little softer. I do think it's quite lovely. I think the shades are beautiful. The color selection is lovely. I personally prefer a more matte heavy palette with some great shimmers. This is obviously more shimmer heavy, but the shimmers that they offer are really nice. Nothing is a duplicate, although a couple of the shades look a bit close, but I like that we've got shimmers that work with the mattes, although there does seem to be a pink shimmer that's missing, and there is a pink matte. Looks like there are 2 purple mattes, a light and a medium tone, and then 3 purple shimmers. There are 2 pink mattes, but I don't see any pink shimmers. There's like a sagey green kind of matte, and then 3 greenish, bluish, silvery shimmers that would work with it. And then we've got a beautiful, lovely, like the center of the flower. What's that called? The stamen or the stamen? I forget what it's called, but the little things that stick out from the center. Kind of a marigold colored matte, and then a light and a medium tone shimmer that would work with that. I see what's probably a brownish matte with a hint of pink, and then I guess the shimmer underneath of the pink might be considered a pink shimmer. It's sort of a pink with brown in it, so I guess that could work with the pink matte or the brown matte. Overall, I think it's a lovely palette. I do really like this color story. I want to try Juvia's Place at some point, but being on a low or no buy, it's not going to happen right now. But if I were to, this is probably the most interesting palette that I've seen from Juvia's Place to my own tastes. I do really like it. All right, let us talk about Nomad Cosmetics. They just released a new palette. Nomad is another brand that I want to try. I always like all of their color stories. Unlike Juvia's Place, I like Juvia as some of their color stories, but I'm not drawn to all of their color stories. But Nomad, yes, I like all of their color stories in all of, I guess probably the last 5 or 6 palettes that they've released. I know some of their much older palettes you can find on Poshmark and Mercari. They don't interest me, but the newer ones, I really like those. Okay, so Nomad's newest release, I believe, is called Fête de Provence, and it's, parties in France, basically. I don't love the outer packaging, honestly. It's a little bit too cartoony for my taste, but the color story on the inside, I really like. I just did a yellow and purple eyeshadow look. It got some mixed reviews from my viewers. Some of you guys liked it, some of you didn't like it at all. I liked it, and at the end of the day, it was my face, so I was happy wearing it. But this palette is basically yellow and purple and pink, and I think it's beautiful. I think there's a nice assortment of shade tones between depths and shimmers versus mattes. You've got several deepening shades that can work with the pink side or a more berry sort of tone. You could go purple, you could go black. There's even a deeper yellow, which is kind of a hard color to do because yellow is a light color by itself. So to do a deeper yellow, often you bring in a little bit of orange or a little bit of brown. This one brings in some orange, but it's still definitely yellow. I think that the inner color story beautifully matches the packaging, and that's something which I really appreciate. Even though this particular packaging doesn't draw me in, the colors reflect what you get on the inside. For example, the Lush Life palette from ColourPop, what you see on the outer packaging is exactly what you're going to get on the inside, and I love that because when I see my palettes lined up, sometimes I might forget what the colors look like on the inside, like all of the color story, and so when the packaging tells me, it's just even easier for me to choose which palette I want for the day. Some of my palettes, like the Michaela palette from Glamlight, just has a silver spine. And so I see that lined up with my palettes and I go, wait, what are the colors in there? I have to stop and think a little bit longer. I like it when the packaging matches the colors on the inside, and this absolutely does. This is a lovely palette. I would be happy to try this at some point if I could get my hands on it. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, good job, Nomad. Lots of fun. Oh, and before I forget, Nomad at the same time released what I believe is a new product for them, lip gloss. In one of their posts on Instagram, they were talking about why they decided to go for lip gloss. It's important to one of the owners, etc. There are 4 glosses included with this collection. 3 of them are more pink toned. One is a peachy pink. One is a vibrant, bright, like maraschino cherry kind of pink. The other one is more of a soft champagne satin. And then the 4th one is a purple lip gloss. Now, I don't know that I guess it depends on how purple it is on the lips. Maybe it's just a light, like lip oil sort of tint, or maybe it's full-on glossy purple. It depends. I would be willing to try these. I do like lip glosses if they're not goopy and sticky. I really like lip oils because they're hydrating and they're smooth. Lip glosses are, for me, a hit or miss. I'd be willing to try these. I probably never will because when I buy this sort of thing, I usually go for the palettes instead. And I'm content with chapsticks. So for me, lip products are not that exciting, but these do look really pretty. And then finally, Blend Bunny has just released a new palette called Primal. Now, I love the way that they revealed this palette. First off, Nomad also does a great job with their reveal. They have imprints in their pans. So they'll show you just one pan and then give you a hint because Nomad is all about destinations. So they'll give you a hint as to how the pan imprint represents the destination, and they'll let people guess the destination of their newest release before it's officially released. And then they give away palettes to people who get the answer right. So that's a great way to engage with your audience, to interact with your customers. It's very creative. Blend Bunny just did something, I mean, it's not the same sort of thing, but they did a similar kind of sneak peek reveal a little bit at a time that got people excited. What they did was they would do a black and white scale picture of the palette except for one row, and they would talk just about that row. You know, this is the green row, and these are what we thought when we were doing this. So you could see, okay, there's a green row, and then, oh, there's a yellow row, and oh, there's a blue row over here. So it was a really exciting way to slowly reveal the palette before they just showed the whole thing. And I don't think they did all of the rows. So maybe we got to see total 50% of the palette, but then we were still left guessing about what the rest of the colors would be. I love the way that Blend Bunny lays out their palettes. They just make sense. Whether they do an entire row of darks, in this case in the middle, or on the bottom, like the Blends palette I think has all the darks on the bottom. It just makes sense. It's a very logical way of laying out their palettes. This one has an entire row of very light tones, and then it's like column by column, you know, all the shades match. Then we've got a row of mid-tones that go kind of dark, honestly. Then we have a row of very deep tones for deeping them out. Then there's a row of shimmers that correspond to those colors, and then we have a white and a black. It just makes sense. It's good layout, it's good design. They're saying that this palette fills in the gaps from the Blends palette, and I think it's really pretty. Honestly, the whole palette definitely tends a little bit onto the darker side, and for me, it would probably be a little too dark. For my shimmers, I like light and mid-tones. So this entire row of shimmers on the bottom, all of them are a little bit too dark for my personal preferences. The rest of the palette, though, I do like. We've got light, medium, dark, lined up, color by color, row by row. It just makes sense. So this is probably a great palette for somebody who just wants a staple in their collection, like where can I get a light yellow? There's a light yellow. Where can I get a light green? There's a light green, that sort of thing. I think it's gonna be a delightful palette for a lot of people. It's not quite the right fit for me personally, but it is a really nice release for Blend Bunny. And that is the rest of my video. So thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I would love it if you commented below if you've picked up any of these palettes, if you plan on picking up any of these palettes, maybe what your experience is. Like, I don't have any experience using Martinez Cosmetics, but maybe you do. And I would love to hear about that and chat with you in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see lots more content. And until I see you again, I hope you have a great day. Bye.